Right then, we are live on Sports Today on what happens to be almost not 24 hours, but close to 20 odd hours since Rafael Nadal won his 21st Grand Slam. And the biggest question on any, I'm not even saying tennis fan, any sports fan's mind that is he the greatest of all time? Before I introduce my guest, let me just tell you that Vishal Uppal is going to be outnumbered on this debate because he has to deal with two folks who are supporting Rafael Nadal and calling him the greatest of all time. I know Vishal doesn't agree with that, but that's the whole point of the debate. And I'm guessing you guys will join in with your comments, and I'll try and take those comments as well. And Vishal, just in my defense, that's not by design. It just so happened that Rajshri said that. I anyway called him up saying that, listen, join into the debate. But I asked him, like, just give me an idea what you're going to be saying. And he said, I think Nadal is good. So
Bring it
before
on.
you tell me, before you say that, I've got someone to join us who already was saying that that's not true. Isn't that correct, Rajshri?
No, absolutely, 100%. Look, I have been a Nadal supporter even when Federer had more Grand Slams than him.
Yeah.
It's a lot to do with their attitude and the way you come back and resilience. But of course, we'll talk a lot more about that, Nikhil.
Okay, I'm taking quick comments from the folks that have joined us. Abhinash Kumar says Rafa is the best. Study Moto, he's a regular watcher, says Novak. Nikhil Novak is the best. Of course, we'll talk about him. Cricket Encyclopedia, we'd be happy to know. He calls himself Cricket Encyclopedia, but has joined a tennis debate. We shall see. We are getting a few converts joining us. He says, of course, Nadal is the best. Amit Kumar says, second most tour final wins behind Federer. I sense a Federer fan there. So now he's included all tour finals and everything that there is. Now, okay, let me just address that in the beginning. Vishal, how I see these tour finals is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that most of these guys are not playing their best. They usually treat these tournaments as, warm-up tournaments. I mean, you quite often see a young player beating a Federer or a Nadal or a Djokovic in all these Queen's Club and whatever, sometimes those Paris Masters or whatever you have. But when it comes to the Grand Slam a week later, then it's the usual suspects that are playing. So am I right in assuming that they're not at their 100% when they're playing these tour finals?
No, not really. One guys
Hmm.
like Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, once they've entered a tournament, they're entering it to win it. They're not really going there to try and find some form. They're trying to win it. So, I
Hmm.
mean, I don't know. I think we'll have to do research on when any of these guys have, played a tournament. How many times has actually someone else won it? Very few occasions,
Hmm.
and that's okay. That can happen. But these guys don't go into tournaments to try and find form. They're going to tournaments to try and win it, and I'm pretty sure you'll find the winning percentage of these guys will be pretty high.
Okay, Rajshri, come in on that, and I will have to get exact data, but all I can tell you, even offhand, is that yes, these guys may have been winning those tour finals, yet we had a situation where once in a while someone else would win a tour final, which wasn't happening in Grand Slams at all. Other than these three guys, they were almost had like a 95, 96, maybe even 99% success rate. That would drop down to maybe an 80%, a 75% in tour finals. So should we consider tour finals here, firstly?
No, we should, and I agree with Vishal there. You know, a lot of these players who have been performing well on tour finals, they have been ruthless and relentless in
Hmm.
these matches. But just to put data in perspective here, Nikhil, Vishal,
Hmm.
we keep talking about tours, we keep talking about ATP events, we keep talking
Yeah.
about the rivalry between these three. Look, there was nothing to take away from these three. You know, before last night, 20 Federer, Djokovic, Nadal. But the thing with Nadal is, and if you go back to last year, to the last 18 months, Nadal,
Hmm.
again, I don't have the exact numbers, but Nadal, of all of them, played the least number of tournaments. He skipped the
Hmm.
Olympics. He did not play since Roland Garros. He's been battling all those sorts of injuries and inconsistency in the number of tours he played. So for him to
Hmm.
come back after recovering from COVID a few weeks back and that foot injury, just puts him in a different league, not just in the tennis fraternity, but for me as an athlete altogether.
Okay, Vishal, give me your opening comments. I'm not even asking you who you're favoring, who the GOAT is. So I'm already saying it on your behalf. Tell me why Federer is the GOAT, you think?
I don't think Federer is the greatest, but I don't think Nadal is the
Ah.
greatest either because
Hmm.
you
So who's
have
the
to put
greatest? Answer that question.
it's a moot point because they're all greatest in their own right. You have to look at what they've
Hmm.
done for the sport in a holistic manner and not just in terms of who's won how many Grand Slams. I mean, I could sit here and argue all day long to say that, look, what did Federer do for the game of tennis? Look at the impact he's had on the game of tennis. Look at the number of fans he drew to the game of tennis. Look at how high he raised the bar for guys like Nadal and Djokovic and Andy Murray to try and aspire and get to, which made tennis even so much more fun and competitive to watch. So I mean, you can keep arguing on who's the greatest of all time, but the reality is they're all the greatest. I mean, in their own right. I would definitely give you this, that according to me, Rafael Nadal is the greatest on clay courts, seeing the dominance he's had on clay courts. But overall, in the sport of tennis, I don't think Nadal is the greatest. He's one of the greatest, just like Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic, Pete Sampras, Andre Agassi. These guys are one of the greatest players of the sport.
My point is, firstly, don't sit on the fence. And in your case, I'll rephrase it: don't sit on the net, since we're talking about tennis. So we will have to take a stance here, because that's the whole point of the debate. And fans love it. You can go.
In that case, for me, Federer is the greatest of all time, simply based on the fact the impact he had on the sport. He's had on the sport. He's taken the sport to a new level. He's taken the marketing rights, the sport rights to a new level. He's taken the number of people who fell in love with watching tennis again is all thanks to Roger Federer. So in that case, I can sit here and argue, look, Nadal has just caught up, right, to 21 and overtaken Federer. But Federer was the one who broke Sampras's 14. He was the first to get to 15, the first to get to 16, the first to get to 17, 18, 19, 20. He's always, been one step ahead of them. And I can sit here and argue, well, he's been injured for most part of the last 2 years. So he hasn't had a chance to win another Grand Slam. And I dare to say that he's not going to get another chance to win another Grand Slam, seeing what his age is and seeing the fact that he's getting injured. So, for me, if you look holistically of what these players have brought to the table, I think Federer will be the greatest of all time, if you really must coin that phrase. But I think for me, Rafael Nadal is definitely the greatest on clay courts ever.
Okay, I'm going to come to you, Rajshri. Before that, few questions to Vishal of all the answers that he's given. Firstly, why is it that we say he's the greatest on clay? Why don't we say Federer is the greatest? He's not the greatest, but he's the greatest on grass court. Djokovic is not the greatest, but he's the greatest hard court player. Why do you have to separate clay from all other thing? And if that's the case, then let's also do it with regards to Roger Federer. Let's also do it with regards to Novak Djokovic. He may win in most slams, but
I'll tell you why. Because look at the way Rafael Nadal has dominated French Open.
Sure.
I mean, we haven't seen that in the history. We haven't seen that in the tennis history. For me, I don't think Federer is the greatest grass court player. I think Pete Sampras was the greatest grass court player. Having said that, the surface while it is still called grass at Wimbledon, it has been slowed down considerably, which has changed the nature of the way the game is being played, on grass courts as well.
But that's not anybody's fault, Vishal. I mean, that's not Rafa's fault.
I'm not saying it's anybody's fault, but as a tennis purist, you have to understand the difference between playing on grass courts as opposed to playing on clay courts. Clay courts were always slow, and they tested your skill level in a certain way. Grass courts, on the other hand, were always fast, and they tested your skill level in a different way. Now what we see is all surfaces are pretty much playing the same. So when you are, up against a big server, it doesn't really matter anymore. As opposed to in the past, where if you were up against a big server on grass, you knew, oh boy, I'm in trouble. Sure. Or if you were up against a clay court specialist on clay, you knew, oh boy, I'm in trouble. So that's why, for me, I mean, one of the greatest Wimbledon victories of all time is Andre Agassi beating Goran Ivanisevic in the finals.
Yeah.
Just because of the nature of the surface at that time, how it played, what was going on. So, I mean, like I said, in totality, you cannot look at who's won more trophies. You have to look at who's had the greatest impact on sport overall to determine if you're going to have that argument, who's the greatest of all time. I mean, yes, Michael Jordan took basketball to a new level. Tiger Woods took golf to a new level. But are you going to sit here and say that maybe Jack Nicklaus isn't the greatest of all time, or if Magic Johnson or Larry Bird are not in the same league? They're all in the same league. It just depends on who's how we perceive what we as to what their contribution to the sport in total is.
Okay, Rajshri, I love the fact, and it's not just Vishal. Every Federer fans now. I mean, the goalpost changes, right? At one point it kept was that, oh, he's won more titles. When Rafa reaches there, we'll see. Now he's reached there, so now it's like the more intangibles that are being looked at. Okay, so he's greater there. So forget about the data now. Forget about. Let's look at now. What is there to say? And I'd love Rajshri's opinion. What is there to say that Nadal didn't get as many fans onto the tennis court, and who did anyone tally that Federer got more fans and not Nadal? I mean, it'd be a
Hey, Raji,
close fight.
before you answer that, is it fair for the moderator of this debate to be such a biased
No,
Nadal
but
fan?
that's a fact. That's listen. I put out a disclaimer right at the start saying that listen, it's 2 against 1, and listen. To be honest, I'm playing my role as a moderator perfectly because I'm adding wo kya aag mein ghee or whatever
Masala.
masala in the whole chat. Yeah, that's my job. You see enough TV to realize how these moderators are. I'm learning from the
No,
best. Go ahead, Raj.
we'll be fair to Vishal. I'll be fair to Vishal. I agree with him that the number of tournaments, the number of titles, the number of hundreds should not determine your great. Just that alone should not determine your greatness. But here's my point, Vishal. Again, I'll come back to what I started off with briefly. Rafa Nadal, the personality. Obviously, this is not to say that Djokovic does not have resilience. Pete Sampras, Chang, Agassi, or Federer, they do not have resilience. They do, and that is why they're playing at that level. They have achieved what they have. But just look at the sheer impact Nadal has had. He's carried those niggles throughout his career. It's been his 20th year in professional tennis. It is, Vishal, you would know better than both Nikhil and me that it is impossible to carry, nearly impossible, superhuman. These have been superhuman efforts for him to carry on with that kind of momentum. Also, people talk about Sachin Tendulkar being the greatest. Does that mean that Brian Lara is a lesser batsman than him? How many batsmen have scored 401 not out in Test cricket? How many batsmen have scored 500 in a first-class innings? It's not just sheer numbers. Lara has far many less hundreds than Sachin Tendulkar, but they're almost there at the same level. Tendulkar, he battled that fatal tennis elbow for the last 10 years of his career. He went on to get those hundreds. He went on to win a World Cup for India. Nadal has had the same impact, in my opinion, even when he was far behind Federer in terms of the Grand Slams. Is the sheer spirit that he brought. He's always, and yesterday, by the way, sorry to digress a little bit, that final, where he faced those 2 break points at 2-3 in the third set, it almost was like a Nadal of old. Suddenly his eyes become big. He's suddenly pep talking himself, and suddenly you see him smashing a much younger player, a much more potent player, at least on current form. So that is for me the kind of spirit that Nadal brings on a tennis court, and that for me is what makes him the GOAT of the set.
Actually, I loved all your arguments. Before I go to Vishal, just the one complaint that I have, why are you taking away the numbers debate? You're saying numbers don't matter. He's ahead on the numbers debate. He's ahead.
I'm not saying numbers don't matter. I'm saying that I agree that numbers alone don't matter. And obviously, when you
I'll tell you why, Nikhil. Stats hide more than they reveal. Never forget that.
Oh. You remember what our good friend Navjot Sidhu used to say in all those cricket shows we used to say about stats? He used to say, I don't know if Vishal remembers, he came on multiple shows with Mr. Sidhu. I'm taking a few comments, very interesting comments from the folks that are joining us. Abhinash Kumar says, Rafa is more resilient and hardworking than the other two. Yesterday's match was a great example of what he said. Rafa is the best. He's God. Amit Kumar has an interesting bit, and Vishal, you'll like it. He says, Federer is talked in parallel with Tom Brady. Federer has biggest endorsement deals. Federer brought fans to the stadium. The ticket prices soared up because of the people wanted to watch him, which is true. I'm not disagreeing with you, Amit, at all. I also said that there is no yardstick to measure if Nadal didn't have that impact and if he didn't bring as many people to the stadium and if people don't enjoy. I mean, in terms of just share numbers of people supporting, I think it'll be a close battle between a Federer and a Nadal. I think that's one area where Djoko will lose out on in terms of where this battle goes. But yeah, Vishal, you had any thoughts of what Rajshri said?
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, it's the same thing. You have to always look at things holistically when you're trying to figure out who's the greatest of all time. Yes, of course, he's done incredibly well, and he's resilient. He's this and he's that. But so is Federer. But so is Novak. They all are. That's why they won 20 Grand Slams. If they wouldn't
Yeah.
be, they would not be at that level. Let's just be honest. We would not even be having this
Sure.
debate. The fact that they're all up there, they have worked exceedingly hard in their careers. Now, Nadal's game style looks more like he's putting in more effort, but Federer is so natural and gifted. He looks like smooth as silk. But that doesn't mean Federer doesn't, work that hard. That doesn't mean Federer is not resilient. That doesn't mean that Federer doesn't have the same fighting qualities that a Nadal has. They all have. I mean, look at the way from almost, let's say, 2004, 2005 onwards, look at how, or maybe a little later, look at how Federer has dominated world of tennis, barring French Open. Look at how he dominated on every surface. I mean, that's amazing. That's similar to that is what we're seeing Novak doing, in the last year or so. Where
the counter argument, sorry Vishal, the counter argument to that was, and many have said that before, that Federer got those easy 7-8 slams to begin with. There was no Djokovic, there was no Rafael Nadal. Sampras was past his peak. Agassi was past his peak. 2003 to 7-8 slams were like.
I'm sorry. That is rubbishing and insulting the greatness of guys like Leighton Hewitt and Marat Safin and all these guys. These guys were, these guys.
Come on, they're not the same. I love them. I love Marat Safin, but they're not the same level.
That's the whole point, Nikhil. Federer made himself so much better that these guys didn't look as great. These guys are great players. You telling me Leighton Hewitt isn't a great player? I mean, someone who's followed tennis.
How many slams? 1, 2 slams. I mean, you get lost. So I'm saying consistently. I'm talking about great players who played, like whatever 3 finals in a year, or won more than 10 slams. Agassi is there, or Sampras is there. I agree that, but not Leighton Hewitt, not Marat Safin. I mean, may not be. It's like Dominic Thiem of today's era. Or would they be great?
Come on. Leighton Hewitt was world number 1. Look at how great Andy Roddick was. Andy Roddick has gone on record to say, I would have won at least 6 Grand Slams had it not been for Roger Federer.
But I'm saying not that level. I'm saying, see, there's a Wawrinka there.
My point, Nikhil, you're making my point. My point to you was why Federer is the greatest is because he raised the bar that high that it forced Nadal, Djokovic, Murray to catch up to him. He took the level of tennis that high that guys were forced to work that much harder to catch up to him. So
Vishal, I'm talking about the greatest of all time competing at the same time. The examples you're giving are not goats. I am saying Nadal played a goat in Federer for the best part. He played a goat in Djokovic. Not one slam winner.
Roger Federer forced Nadal and Djokovic to even come to the level of being goats. Let's put it that way. He took the bar so high, he forced them to get up there.
Okay, and so it allowed them to go ahead of him. You accept? So he raised the bar high, and then they went ahead.
No. But I'm not taking anything away from Rafa or from Djokovic. I'm saying, like I said, your sole argument is based on one fact. He's got 21 Grand Slams, and Federer and Djokovic.
That's what matters. And by the way, Rajarshi had other points as well. Huh? He spoke about resilience, mental toughness, and also a number of fans that he gets. One, Rajarshi, you answer that. I'll also throw a question that came as a super chat. I can't ignore that. So I'm taking that question and let Rajarshi answer.
I can sit here and I can argue with you a controversial point where I can tell you how Federer's record has been spotless, but there have been question marks on Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic. I can sit here and argue this all day long.
Listen, Vishal. You can only argue on things that are on paper. You cannot have innuendos and looking at probability. Someone is saying that. I mean, once it is there, prove it. If it is, then we'll talk about it. I mean, so I'm saying 21 is on record. It happened in front of everyone. It's registered, stamped. What you're saying is just innuendos. It is just conjecture. So once it comes on paper, and that day we'll concede to you on that debate or any other debate that you might have, which you referred to the other day saying, I want to know what he eats. So Klendu has had a super chat. So I really have to take that. Actually, you take that. He says, forget impact and all. And what makes Rafa great is the fact that when he came out to play initially, everyone said that, listen, by the time he's 30, he'll be on a wheelchair. Forget
Yeah.
about playing tennis. He'll be done. He can never come close to a Federer. A lot of people made that argument. Today, he's 35. He's won a Grand Slam. Isn't that
Exactly.
another way of looking at it? Yeah.
That is exactly the point. That is exactly the point, Nikhil. When he was so explosive and he
Yeah.
had these antiques that you were not quite used to seeing around, say, Federer on Sampras, and then Nadal came up, and
Yeah.
he. The thing is, he's been as explosive right throughout his tennis career. And also
Mhm.
to make a point, 21 Grand Slams, you have to give it to that man, even if it's just one over, even if it's just one over Djokovic and Federer. If Djokovic finishes with 24 Grand Slams, then we can probably reshape that debate, and we can definitely revisit who is the GOAT at that time. And it definitely makes a significant impact on your status as a player. Also, the fact is, Vishal, if you're arguing Federer as the GOAT of this era, here is the other stat. What is the head-to-head between Nadal and Federer? 40 times, and
Nadal's a,
Nadal is a clear
yes,
leader there.
yes,
So
yes.
shouldn't
But,
that settle the
but
point as well?
no, no, absolutely not, because that tells you about the tactical difference in the game. That then goes into very tactical areas of the game, which the
But that's sport, Vishal. One is, if you're better tactically, you're better, right? That's sport.
no, 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 no. Look, it's how you have to understand how the game evolved. Once post that, before that,
Sure.
courts used to play faster, balls were faster. There
Sure.
wasn't as much
Sure.
technology which aided
Sure.
spin. As
Sure.
courts became slower and more high bouncing, it suited Nadal's style of play a lot more than it did of Federer's. Earlier on, when courts were
Completely
faster,
agree.
once again, when courts were faster, low bouncing, you had many more people with a single hand backhand. You saw many more people serving and volleying. The way technology courts changed, it started favoring the person at the baseline hitting more topspin and hence, Nadal using his forehand could counter Federer on his high backhand, which is very
Yeah.
tough to hit as a single hand backhand. I can tell you that I hit it. I played. And so, there are many factors of how technology has evolved, how changes in the game have come about. Look at it. Serve and volley tennis is dead today. Such a beautiful art form. It is dead today. Why is it dead? People are afraid to go to the net. Why? Because of the top spin and the strings and the balls in the courts. They know the percentage of trying to win points is very low now. So, of course, Nadal has beaten Federer more times than anyone else. But that's just a one-on-one matchup which suits Nadal more than it suits Federer.
But
Nikhil, with your permission,
yeah. Go ahead.
with your permission, can I also put one more stat?
Yeah.
Federer leads Nadal 3-1 on grass courts. Nadal has a far more dominant record against Federer on clay. So shouldn't that also be a parameter where Federer, or in this era, if you're saying he's the most dominant in grass, Nadal has
No,
dominated Federer.
not at all, Rajshri. The reason why I say that to you is why that comparison doesn't hold good is because grass courts no longer are fast courts. They have been slowed down. As a matter of fact, they did a survey where they realized that the grass at Wimbledon was playing slower than the clay at French Open. The grass court ball is 20% bigger than the clay court ball. The grass blades were kept longer so that it slows down the game even more. So there were changes made. Come on, we guys are from the era we've seen serve and volley tennis. When was the last time you saw, if you look at grass court tennis from a purist point of view, where the baseline at Wimbledon was all ganja and going forward was all grass? When was the last time you saw someone at Wimbledon playing from 20 feet behind the baseline and still being in the point? So the way
Okay.
the surface has changed has made a big impact on how people have counted. I would love to see a Nadal or a Djokovic go up against, even a few years back, a guy like Milos Raonic on a fast grass court, and Raonic bombing serves, which are his strength. You've neutralized everybody else's strength. The way you've changed the courts, made it slower, and now it only fits one kind of a player, which is if you're fast, if you're athletic, if you're lean, you're gonna make it. If you're tall and you may not be as good an athlete, but you have a bigger serve, it doesn't matter anymore. So
Okay,
it's
Vishal.
a very
Okay.
technical argument then.
I for once never argue with you. I'm agreeing with all the facts that you're saying that the courts have become this, that, that. My point is, it was Nadal the director of tennis who was given in charge to make courts the way it is. It so naturally happened that the courts became like that. My point is, you're gonna play the cards you're dealt. He's been dealt these conditions, right? And he's found a way to excel as that. If you're the greatest, if you're Federer, you're the greatest. Find a way to excel at that. I'm saying the nature of courts will keep changing. That is not in Nadal's
Okay.
hand. That is not in Djokovic's hand. We only judge a player with the conditions they play. So, for example, now I'm not going to
Okay, so
say that, listen, let's not count Sachin Tendulkar's 100 hundreds,
okay,
because
let's
you know
ask you
what?
this question.
No,
Who's
I'm
ahead?
just saying.
Who's ahead head to head in Novak Djokovic versus Rafael Nadal? I don't
Novak
know about.
Djokovic is. Novak
Oh,
Djokovic is.
so
Yeah.
then that same argument comes true.
No,
If
so
if
exactly. So let me answer
Nadal
that. Let me answer that. I'm saying if he's ahead and he goes past Rafael Nadal's number of Grand Slam, which Rafa is ahead at the moment, and he ends up as more Grand Slam towards the end, well then he'll be the greatest. Let's accept it. Whatever the conditions, you have to play to the conditions. I can't say that. Listen, I don't care about Sachin's 100 because you know what? Sunil Gavaskar played in uncovered pitches, or Gandappa Vishwanath played in uncovered pitches, so their centuries were greater. No, Sachin, whatever conditions he was given, got 100 hundreds. He's arguably the greatest batsman that India has produced in terms of numbers, and you will say that. Same way,
but I'm not
depends.
saying that.
Conditions might change. Huh?
But that's not my argument. That
Oh,
I'm
you
not
said that
saying.
the courts have changed, so it's suiting Nadal, but Nadal did nothing to make the
No,
courts
no,
like
no, no,
that.
no. I'm not saying that the courts were changed and it's suiting Nadal. No, it's suiting Djokovic also. Then Djokovic has a higher
Sure.
win record against Nadal. So then how can Nadal be the greatest if somebody else is beating him more?
Because he's got 21. No, he's got 21 slams. If
He's
Yeah,
Joko
but
goes to
okay,
22, then he'll become good.
Nikhil, hand on your heart. If Djokovic overtakes Nadal, will you call Djokovic the greatest of all time?
I will.
Absolutely.
I
I
will.
will.
Can I
I
also say
will.
why?
I will. I will.
I will
Okay,
also.
just taking a few comments. Divyang Tripathi has a comment, and this is against Rafa. He says Rafa has 0 ATP finals, less weeks as number one player, and guy with 61% slams on one surface cannot be considered a goat. Divyang, thank you for your argument, and I want to take all sides. So
And Nikhil, that's a brilliant point, because what basically Devank is saying, there are stats to go for and against all of these
no,
players,
no,
not
no,
just
no.
one.
So all I'm saying is, no, I'm putting all of it in together. I am saying, isn't French Open a Grand Slam? It is, right? And he ended up winning it. Isn't Wimbledon
And
a Grand Slam? It
the
is.
greatest of
Why
all
must
time.
why
Nikhil.
must winning on Wimbledon be considered higher than French Open? No, it shouldn't be. And if he's dominated clay, well, so be it. Well, let's find a guy who can dominate on grass as much as Rafa
Hence,
can. At the end, you'll count the Grand Slams.
hence he is the greatest of all time on clay,
No,
because of
he's
how
won
he
every
has.
slam minimum 2 times.
Well,
He's won on grass. He's won on hard
Exactly.
courts.
that's fine.
Yep.
But he is the greatest on clay for the simple reason of how he has dominated clay. Everybody else is winning on every other surface also. He's not the only one winning
Well,
Aussie.
Federer won once on clay. So let's remove
That's
Federer
why,
from the debate because he
yeah,
couldn't play on clay, so he's out.
that,
Only
yeah,
once he
that's
won.
okay. And he won only one clay court tournament. But I
Right,
can
Wonder.
no, but
Wasn't
I
an
can tell you
all-rounder.
Nadal has won Australian Open only twice.
Well,
Federer has won it
exactly my point. I didn't
once.
make that argument. I am taking Grand Slams in totality. You said let's look at
But
surfaces.
Baba, the whole point is he's the greatest on clay because he's won clay 13 times or
So
14
then
times.
Joko, if okay, I take back my words. If Joko goes
Joko is
past
the
Nadal, I will not say GOAT. I will say he's the greatest on hard court
okay.
because what
Out,
he wins only
out
on.
of the three of them, let's do this. Let's just say Nadal is the greatest on clay. Djokovic is the
No,
greatest in
he's the
Melbourne.
greatest of all time. He has 21 slams.
Federer is the greatest on Wimbledon in US Open, and that's it.
I'm loving this argument. I'm loving Rajshri. Okay. So Akshay has a fantastic point. I'm going to take that comment. You guys will die laughing. He says, you know what? A friend of mine tells me Nadal is the greatest vaccinated player ever, which is true. I don't know. We don't know what Federer's vaccination status at the moment. Okay. Bjorn Borg won on both grass and clay, 11 slams, same period. That's correct. Tim has a very valid point. Yeah. Um, so a lot of comments have come. I've forgotten your names, guys, because it slipped out really fast. But to both Rajshri and Vishal, Rajit also has says here, Rajat Ghosh, he says, we can argue as much as we want between Federer and Nadal. At the end of the day, Djoko will be greatest. He's going to go past all the slams. He's won on all surfaces. Is that true, Vishal?
Not, I mean, for me, I told you at the start, the stat of who wins most Grand Slam is not going to determine for me who's the greatest of all time.
Okay. Rajshri.
And I'm going to hold you to this, Nikhil. The day if Djokovic takes over Rafael Nadal, I'd love to see this argument coming from you that Nadal is the greatest of all time.
No, I will say, if Djoko goes past, as a true journalist, an unbiased one, and being objective, I will say whoever wins most Grand Slam is the greatest.
Then you'll have to talk like a fan.
Vishal has made some very technical points, and look, and he's a pro. He's the pro here. He understands tennis. He obviously, everybody knows that. But here's the thing, Nikhil. If Federer were to overtake Nadal by one Grand Slam, for me, Nadal would still be the greatest. If Djokovic equals Nadal in terms of Grand Slams, for me, Djokovic will be the greatest, because that's where he's had the upper hand in head-to-head contests. Nadal has been by far, tactically, yes, Vishal made some points, but statistically, Nadal has had the run over Federer. And also the points that we were stressing on. Federer just that one French Open, and Nadal and Djokovic had the only two players in the Open era to win each Grand Slam at least twice. So for me, numbers will round
There's another stat, and Nikhil, you and Rashri can help me with that. I don't know. What's the head-to-head between Federer and Djokovic?
Federer and Djokovic will look at it.
Rachi, could you help me out on that one? Meanwhile, I'll read a few comments quickly. Anubhav says that, he's pointing out the fact that Djoko has, slams across surfaces. That's a valid point, and that's why I'm saying it is. Nob says Federer, it is. Satvik Sharma says Bobby Fischer won only one World Chess Championship. Still, he's arguably the greatest of all time. Bradman didn't have the highest number of test runs, so why not Federer? Valid point he makes. Satvik says, so sometimes you have emotional favorites as well. Manav Bagga says, for me, Djokovic is the best, given the crowd is mostly against him. Barring the Australian Open, which is true, and he still finds a way to win. Also, the first to win each Grand Slam twice, and also best head-to-head. I completely agree with the arguments, and that's why I've said got to be objective. I like the fact that Rajshri is also objective. He's saying, listen, if it so happens that both Djoko and Nadal are tied, I will go with Djoko as the greatest because of better head-to-head, and the same argument he had for Federer versus Nadal. So it's not that he said it for one and not for the other. So at least the fact, what we need to be is consistent with our arguments. Doesn't matter which player you're talking about. Trying to be consistent by saying whoever wins most slam becomes the greatest. Okay, many more. Rafa has an Olympic gold medal, which comes once every 4 years, says Grabby. Okay, Nob says Federer is like Sachin. Sometimes it's an emotion, and I saw another comment by somebody who said that Federer is an emotion. Absolutely. See, for fans, you will connect with one player, you like him. As a cricketer, for example, I love Yuvraj Singh. It probably could be my favorite. In terms of numbers, he may not have those kind of numbers, but you just like the impact, what he got to the game. So as fans, you will just connect with a player, maybe because of the way he does. But we're talking greatest in terms of, what they leave behind or number of titles. At least I'm looking at it numbers point of view. Personal favorites can be different. Like, so for example, as I said, personal favorite could be a Yuvraj, but will he be greatest of all time? No, I probably will give it to a Sachin, purely in terms of, numbers that he's got.
What's the head-to-head?
Nikhil, can I quickly rattle up the numbers?
Please. Go ahead.
27-23. It's so Djokovic, I think, leads 27-23 in 50 meetings. But here's the thing: since 2015, Federer has beaten Djokovic only 4 times in 14 meetings there. So, that also puts things in perspective over the last 5 years.
But Federer is also 5-7 years older than these guys. Don't forget that either.
He's 6 years older than,
He milked that time. Because of that, he got those 8 easy Grand Slams.
No. Now you're sorry, Nikhil. You are disrespecting tennis.
Come on, you can never. Nathan Hewitt and Marat Safin are not GOAT. Nadal is fighting 2 GOATs in Federer and Djoko. Djoko is fighting 2 GOATs in Federer, and Marat Safin, Leighton Hewitt are not GOATs. They're not the same category.
They may not be GOATs, but you cannot undermine them. You cannot disrespect them in that sense that, they were not in the same league. No, my friend.
Absolutely, they were not. They were not.
Winning a French Open is the same as winning a Wimbledon, then winning Grand Slams, no matter what era you belong to, is the same. It
No.
does not
Michael,
matter.
no,
There's a
no,
number
no.
of Grand
Listen,
Slams, isn't it, Vishal?
Michael Chang
Sorry?
cannot be compared to a Boris Becker, or Pat Cash cannot be compared to a Pete Sampras. I mean, they won one slam each, all of these guys, but they're not the same level as a Sampras.
Won
Or
2 years back to back.
yeah, so I'm saying whatever, 1, 2, but can you compare him to a Sampras? No, right? Can you compare him
But
to an
I'm
Agassi?
not
You
in the
can't.
business of comparing. That's the
I'm
point.
just saying. Okay, I'm in the business of comparing, right? So I'm just saying they're not the same
I'm
level.
saying, I'm saying that all these guys are, I mean, okay, fine. If you want to make a comparison, all right, let's see. At the age of 35, who had won how many Grand Slams? You can just, stats, you can just keep saying at the age of 35, who had more Grand Slams out of all the big three?
But why this boundary
But
35? I'm
but
saying when you finish
what
playing,
I'm
we'll count who's done what.
what I'm saying is, because you can use stats to make whatever argument you want to make. Hence, I again repeat myself at the cost of sounding like a broken record. These guys are the greatest of all time. That's it. End of the.
I don't like that. I don't like that. That defeats the point of purpose that we are here for. We want one answer only. That's how debates on television and now this is digital go. You
And
know
that's
that,
why
Vishal.
debates on television and digital platforms are always inconclusive.
Okay. Is that okay, guys? Raj, you have anything to add, or can we wind up because we'll
So,
keep
I mean,
going?
I'll reassert myself again. And for me, right now, even if you look at 35, nobody had 21 Grand Slams. No other men's tennis player had 21 Grand Slams. So there you go. It's
Yeah.
Nadal's at 21 now,
So
35.
I look forward to coming on this debate if Djokovic takes over from Nadal. I'd love to come back on this debate and see you both gentlemen say that Novak Djokovic is the greatest of all time because he's won the maximum number of Grand
I'm saying it
Slams.
now. I'm saying it now.
I'll say it. Yeah.
I'm saying it. And we will come back and we'll do another show on Sports Today. And I'm saying it even now. I do not have to wait for that time. But of course, we'll do another. So what happens going forward? Now, next is French. I know, Djoko beat him last time around. But you have to say again, 22 is looking good. If he's fit, 22 it is going to be. Vishal, you'll concede that?
Nope, I'm not going to because I know tennis and I know the nature of tennis. Nadal will definitely, if he's healthy, will definitely go into French Open as the overwhelming favorite to win it again. Having said that, there's a lot more talent who's ready to give him a run for his money, and it's not going to be easy for him. So, as a former player and as someone who comments on tennis right now, I know I will keep my money in my pocket till Rafael Nadal doesn't lift that trophy. I am not betting on any one horse.
That's a wonderful advice to wrap up our show. We thank you so much for all you guys who joined us and sent your comments. I tried to take as many as possible. Rajshri, thanks for being great company. Vishal, to you as well. We couldn't pin you down, but we will. On that note, I'm leaving you with a promise that once and if Djokovic does go past Rafael Nadal, we'll come back on Sports Today, have another debate. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good night. Bye.
Thank you.